I know a lot of you have been enjoying The Captain, the new documentary that debuted just a few days ago on ESPN. It is a 7-part documentary on Derek Jeter, and we are so happy right now to be joined by a filmmaker and the director of The Captain. He is Randy Wilkins, and he's live with us here on Sports Talk as we begin our second hour of the program. Randy, good to hear you on the show, and thanks so much for doing this. How are you today?
Thank you for joining me. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
We need to be the one thanking you, that's for sure, because I know you're busy. We've got the second episode debuting here in just a couple of hours in El Paso. A lot of people are excited about that. And as you might imagine, there are a lot of Yankee fans in El Paso because there's Yankee fans everywhere. Right, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been pretty remarkable to hear from fans across the country and really across the world to share their thoughts with me about the film and about Derek and the impact he's had on him. So I'm happy there are a lot of Yankees fans in El Paso. I'm very excited to hear that, and I hope they're enjoying the film.
Now, did you grow up a Yankees fan as a kid?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm born in the Bronx, raised in the Bronx. I live maybe half an hour, 40 minutes away from Yankee Stadium. So that's all I've known in terms of being a baseball fan. We don't recognize the Mets. So there's only one team in town. And yeah, I mean, the Yankees have been my team since birth.
As a Met fan, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. But you're
You're
right.
welcome.
You're speaking the truth, Randy. Yankees fans don't recognize Mets fans. Even in '86, the Yankee fans pretended like that year never happened for the Mets.
Pretty much. We speak with Darryl Strawberry in the film, and we just basically talk about everything but the '86 championship. So,
hey, that's okay. They got their own ESPN documentary last year, right? So they got what they deserved.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, tell me a little bit about the thought process behind this documentary, because when we watched The Last Dance during COVID and really saw Michael Jordan portrayed in that light with all that original footage that was saved and brought back to, that documentary, I'm sure everybody was thinking, who else can we do a doc on that hasn't really been profiled? And Derek Jeter is such a giant name in baseball, but yet was so guarded throughout his professional career. I was shocked that we even found out that you were able to do this in the first place, because I didn't know if Jeets was going to want to give you the opportunity and the access to really profile him as in-depth as you have.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked too when I heard it, to be quite honest. This wasn't my seed of an idea. This was brought to me by Spike Lee and Mike Tolan. When Spike reached out to me in June of 2020, I was shocked that Derek wanted to do it, but also that I might have the opportunity to tell Derek's story. So, in speaking with Derek, he became interested when he got the call to be inducted into the Hall of Fame a couple years ago. He had a film crew there, and he started to think back on his career. And he also realized that his daughters had never seen him play baseball before, and they didn't know anything about his life prior to them being in his life. So he started to think about it, and one thing that he constantly talks about is not necessarily a regret, but maybe a hope or a wish that he had been in the moment more during his career. And he was always thinking about what's next, and never really enjoyed the moments that he had over the 20-year career that he had with the Yankees. And then he decided, maybe this is something that I can use as a way to chronicle my life and career with my daughters when they're old enough to watch this. So part of it is The Last Dance. I think that plays a small role in it, because we saw the impact that it had on our culture and kind of helped us get through the early days of the pandemic. But a lot of it has to do with Derek wanting to share these moments with his daughter, and this giving him a chance to actually look back on his career.
Randy Wilkins, filmmaker, director of The Captain. He joins us live here on Sports Talk as we continue. Now, something you said that's really interesting, and that is you get a call from Spike Lee, who asks you about doing this project. The first reaction would be, well, why didn't Spike do the documentary? Was he just too busy at the time? Because this also seems like it'd be something that'd be right up his alley too.
Yeah, he was busy, but he also felt like I was the perfect guy to tell this story as well. So he had his commitments, but I think he believed in me as a filmmaker. He knew my background as a Yankees fan, how passionate I am about the sport of baseball, and that I had the ability to tell this story. So I think he was placing Derek in really good hands, and I think the film reflects that.
Randy, that's got to be as much of a tribute to you as a filmmaker as this documentary, because I know you've got a close relationship with Spike, but to have somebody like that call you, pitch you the idea, and think you're the perfect person for it, you probably were as flattered about that call as you are about the finished product.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great testament of my relationship with Spike, and the amount of work that I put in to help with his projects, and my dedication to the craft, and how much he saw in me. So I'm greatly appreciative of Spike looking out for me.
We saw in the first episode a lot of the early footage of Derek from when he was signed and growing up to his first year with the Yankees. I'm wondering, as you started putting this together over the last year plus, how difficult was it for you to get and obtain all of that old archived footage? And I didn't even realize as much of it would still exist today as we saw early on in the first episode.
It wasn't that hard. A lot of it came from his family. I mean, it came from his own family archives, and I think they had lost some of their archive because of a flood, if I remember correctly. So thankfully, there was still some stuff that was lying around that they had access to, and they provided it right away. His sister Charlie was great with us, both on camera and behind the scenes, in terms of helping us get all that great footage and the family photos and all of that. So I'm really appreciative of that. And we had a great archival researcher in Stephanie Benson, and then prior to her, Sheila Maniar. So we had a great team that was able to unearth all of these gems, and I'm very thankful for it.
That's terrific. And when you started to ask all of the people that have been involved in his career, on the field, off the field, to be a part of this, did everybody pretty much jump at the opportunity, or were there certain individuals that were, let's say, tougher for you to get to interview about Derek than maybe others?
There were one or two people that were tough to get, but when we reached out to people, they were immediately on board. I think the biggest issue is when you're dealing with busy people, you just have to make sure the schedules align. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's so much love for Derek that people were lining up to be a part of it. And they also gave us a lot of their own time. I mean, a lot of these interviews were 3-4 hours long. So not only did they commit to being a part of the project, but they committed to a significant amount of time to discuss his career, the Yankees, and things beyond that. So yeah, people were ready to go. And I think that just shows how much people love Derek.
Randy Wilkins with us here. The name of the documentary is The Captain, episode 2 tonight on ESPN. And then every Thursday for the next 5 weeks, it's a 7-part documentary, and it's going to air every Thursday on ESPN as we talk a little bit about Derek Jeter. When you were telling his story, I know one of the things you probably wanted to do is tell it as accurately as possible. When you sat down and approached this with Derek, is it difficult when someone who has been so guarded during his pro career? Because let's be honest, you play in New York City, as long as Derek Jeter did, he didn't find himself in the back pages of the New York Post, didn't really find himself in the gossip columns for tabloids. He was able to live out his career as one of the most popular athletes in the history of New York sports, and never really had any type of controversy surrounding him on or off the field.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was that difficult, because we had conversations before we filmed a frame of his interview. So he understood going into this, in order for this film to be compelling and for it to work, quite frankly, he was going to have to open up. He couldn't treat me like a beat reporter that was in front of his locker for 20 years. So he knew what this required. He knew that this was a film and not necessarily a spot on the 10 o'clock news to recap a game, that this was about his life, both on and off the field, and that it requires him to open up. But I think the important thing, too, is that the persona that he had publicly as a Yankee was all by design. He did that so he didn't create distractions in the clubhouse. For him, Derek is truly obsessed with winning, and was very aware of all the factors that could influence his team's ability to win games and win championships. And part of that is dealing with the media, especially in New York. So he sacrificed his personality, or sharing his personality. He took the slings and arrows in a way, because he knew that people were going to say he was boring and didn't offer up anything. He knew all that, but he didn't care because the focus was on winning. So he's no longer a player. He no longer has to compete at the highest level. He can open up a little bit, and he's in a different stage of his life. Again, he wants to share a part of his life with his daughter. So in order to do that accurately and with emotion, he had to open up a little bit, and he did for the film.
Randy, as the first episode debuted this past week, one of the things that we got a chance to actually see was that Derek Jeter, it took him a while to get acclimated at the low A level. I mean, 56 errors. He talked about that. What were those discussions talking about those struggles early on in his career?
Yeah, he was honest about it. He did not have a good time early on in his professional career. You know, he played baseball in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's a northern state with bad weather. He didn't grow up in California or Texas or Florida, where he was able to play year round and play against some of the best competition on the high school level. You know, he was playing 15, 20 high school games a year in bad weather. And when you get to the professional ranks and you're facing these guys that play all the time and have elite talent, the game is pretty fast. And I think for Derek, there was no way he could actually prepare for the speed of professional baseball. And it was overwhelming at times. And I think he questioned himself. It was probably the only time where his extreme confidence wasn't consistently carrying him through. But he adjusted. I think that a lot of it goes back to his upbringing. His parents said that, you know, can't was a curse word in his house. I think his experiences as a biracial Black kid in Michigan also toughened him up and forced him to make sure that he navigated the world and especially times when it wasn't going to be easy. So I think that he had the proper foundation to overcome those struggles. He was honest about it. It was tough, but I also think he's tough because of his background and his upbringing, and he was able to overcome it.
How much is being, a biracial, star as he turned into a big part of the documentary as well, when you really start to explore that relationship?
It's a pretty significant part. I mean, it shapes the way that Derek views the world, both on and off the field. There's an interesting dichotomy where Derek loves to be seen, and he views the playing field as almost like a Broadway stage, and he wanted people to watch, and he wanted to show off. But as soon as he stepped off that stage, he preferred that people didn't watch him and didn't look at him because it made him uncomfortable, given his experiences growing up in Michigan with his sister and his parents. So, yeah, it's a pretty significant part of the film. We delve into it in episode 5. So, yeah, it's part of who he is, and in telling his story, it has to be a part of it.
As the documentary started to take shape, and really as you started putting this thing together, tell me a little bit about what you learned about Derek Jeter as a person, something that you might not have ever thought about as a casual fan watching him all those years. But the closer you grew to Jeter during this project, the more you realized there was so much more to him than what was on the surface.
Trust and loyalty are two of the most important things in his life. And he measures people by those two values. And if you don't match how he views it, then you're not really in his inner circle. And there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's incredibly important to him that he's able to trust those around him. It's incredibly important that people are loyal to him because he's loyal to them. It's a two-way street. It's not some superstar expecting people to kind of worship the ground that he walks on. It's mutual because that's how he looks at it. He treats friends like family, and he's extremely loyal to them. He has their back, and he expects the same. So going into it, I didn't know how much that influenced the way that he interacts with those around him, and that's kind of like that line of separation. So that was really interesting to learn about him, and it's very, very important to him.
So with episode 2 coming up tonight and then the other 5 in the Thursdays to come, what do you think that my listeners and everybody else that's watching The Captain, what do you think that they're really going to take away from this documentary when it's all said and done?
Honestly, that's not my job. My job is to present it to people and that they can come to their own conclusions. So many people come to it with so many thoughts and feelings and hopes and experiences that it shapes their viewing experience. Mm-hmm. So as a Yankees fan in New York, it might be different from a Yankees fan in El Paso. There are things that there's a way in which Derek has impacted people in different ways. So it wouldn't be my place to tell an audience how to walk away from a film. I just hope that they're emotionally engaged. I hope that they have fun. I hope that they do learn something about Derek. But that takeaway is really should be up to the people that are watching.
Well, Randy, I think they're going to learn a lot just because, again, people know Derek Jeter, but they know him from watching him play. And as you mentioned, you didn't want to be like another beat writer, just getting the usual questions and answers. You're going to dig into someone's life that really has never given anybody this kind of access before, even close to it. So I think the biggest thing people are going to learn is they're going to learn more about what Derek Jeter was like on and off the field, because they're going to see him from a totally different perspective than maybe they thought they knew all these years.
Absolutely. It's just the specifics of it. I don't ever want to dictate to an audience. So I feel confident that they're going to learn more about Derek. They're probably going to feel like a Derek Jeter expert around the water cooler when this is all over. And as long as they feel that way, then I'm happy.
And I'm sure for you, you've been doing this a long time. I'm not going to ask you, is this among your favorite projects that you've ever worked on? But when you look back on this, I'm sure being a Yankee fan, getting a chance to profile in depth someone like Derek Jeter has to be one of your career accomplishments.
Oh, absolutely. But it's more so just because of the way my career has unfolded and having the opportunity and challenge to tell a story of this magnitude and with this much exposure. So the Yankee fan is happy, but the filmmaker is happier.
Makes sense. By the way, Randy, you've been terrific. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention El Paso and Peter Schwartzbein, who's listening to this conversation right now, along with his mom, Sylvia. I understand you both went to college together, and Pete gets a huge assist for getting you on the show today, because he came at me with this. I never would have guessed in a million years that the two of you had a chance to go to college together.
Yeah, that's my brother from college. So shout out to Pete and shout out to Sylvia, my mom in El Paso. So they've been incredibly supportive. They're wonderful people. I consider them close friends and very important people in my life. So I'm happy for his success down there, and I'm happy that they're listening.
You ever been to El Paso, Randy?
Not yet, but I will be one day. Yeah.
We got to get you here after this. That's for sure. So listen, congratulations again on the captain. Appreciate all the time having you join us on the show, and really can't wait for not just episode 2 tonight, but the rest of this series.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.